If your home recorded drums sound like this, and you want them to sound like this, then you need to start with the first video in this series so that you don't fall into the same traps I did early on. But if you already watched that video, then you're ready for this one. So let's get into some kick drum mixing advice. Now, first I want to say that of course I'm going to be going over a lot of valuable information here. But if you want to take an even deeper dive, you can register for my online mix training that I hold a couple times a week, which is free, by the way, and you will also receive a copy of my home studio mix guide just for signing up. Now, first we're going to be going over the most important tool we have when mixing kick drum, and that is equalization. So in this drum mix, we have a kick in, and there are a couple EQs on there, so we'll turn those off. We have a kick out, which is a sub kick. Turn the EQ on that off, and we have a kick sample. And we'll turn the EQ on that off as well. Now, all three of these kick drums are sent to a kick bus. So we also have an EQ on there. We'll turn that off as well. And what we're gonna do is basically start from scratch. Now, just for demonstration purposes, I'm only gonna be putting an EQ on the kick bus here. To make this quick, normally, as you would see, I like to go through and EQ all of my kick drums individually, but to make this a bit faster, let's just throw an EQ on the kick bus. Now remember, this is where all our kick drums are sent, so we can EQ them all together at the same time. And for this example, I'm just gonna use a stock EQ. I'm gonna use the Logic channel EQ. Why am I using this EQ? Because I realize not everybody has the plugins I have, and this will be a great one for an example so that everybody can understand here. A little tidbit of information here is I rarely ever use EQs such as this one. I call EQs like this or the FabFilter Pro Q3, I call them visual EQs because you can kind of cheat with your eyes and see where everything's peaking. I typically use non-visual EQs, EQs such as this one, the SSL channel, where you can't really cheat with your eyes at all. It's all about using your ears and figuring out where to cut and boost frequencies. To find out more why I believe EQs such as this one are better to use, you're gonna have to register for my free mix training in the description. Typically, when I first start mixing kick drum, I like to find the not so pleasing frequencies first, and these frequencies are found between 100 and 300 hertz. So let's go searching around for some of those frequencies, and all we got to do that is boost up one of these bells and do a nice sweep around, and these unpleasing frequencies should stick out. Did you guys hear that? That is like the sound of one of those big exercise balls bouncing on a wood floor. So we can cut a little bit of that out because that is an area that does not sound pleasing in our kick drum. And that just tightens up our kick real nicely. Now, in this frequency area, it's important that you keep searching around because a lot of times it can also sound pretty muddy, anywhere from 200 to 300 hertz, a little bit higher up than this cut. Now that we've cleaned this kick drum up a little bit, it's time to do the fun stuff, which is boosting. And this is a metal song, so these are metal drums. So we're gonna wanna add a bunch of that slap and attack that we hear in a lot of rock and metal drums. And that comes with boosting everything above 8K. So here we're just gonna bring our shelf boost to about 8K, and we can boost some of this up as well. Really depends on how clicky you wanna get, but this is definitely an area that's gonna make your kick stand out and really cut through the mix, but it's all preference. So mess around with boosts here, and you're definitely going to want to do this with the music playing and at least the rest of the drums playing. And that's pretty good for me right there. A lot of times I'll actually add a little bit of extra knock at about 4 or 5K. So we'll bring another bell boost in between 4 and 5K and do some boosting there. Check it with the rest of our drums. Sounding pretty good. Now, of course, what would our kick drum be without low end? And we've probably brightened this baby up a little bit too much and thinned it out by boosting so much high end and removing some of the low mids. So now we can actually go and add some low end back. And this fundamental bass frequency for the kick is found somewhere around 60 hertz. Now, all of these frequencies and more are found in my home studio mix guide, which you can grab for free in the description, or you'll get it if you register for the mix trading. But now let's move on to some compression. Now, again, for this example, I'm going to be using a plugin I don't normally use. I'm going to use the Logic stock compressor because I think it'll be a lot easier for people to follow along. And I realize not everybody uses the third-party compressors that I use. Again, in this drum example, we have a kick in, a kick out, and a sample, and they are all going to a kick bus. So we are just going to compress on the kick bus. So I'll add the stock Logic compressor. Now I'm also going to choose the vintage FET here because this is my favorite out of their emulations. This is their emulation of the 1176, which is my favorite compressor. Now, these are rock drums, so I'm going to change some settings right away. So I'm going to take the ratio to about 4:1, which is what I'm usually at for a kick drum. And I'm also going to make the release the fastest it can go. I'm going to turn the auto release off, and I'm going to turn the auto makeup gain off. And what I'm going to do is slam this with some compression so that we can find the attack of this kick drum. We don't want to completely squash all the punch out of this kick. I actually want to exaggerate it. So what I'm going to do is take the threshold down to where I'm really compressing this kick. Turn the makeup gain up a little bit so we can hear it. And what I'm going to do now is search around for the attack of this kick drum. So if we can hear right now, we're really squashing the transient and taking a lot of punch out of the kick. We're hammering it. So I'm going to slowly move this up, this attack, and then we're going to listen for when we could hear that punch again. Right around there, right around 80 milliseconds. So now we can back off on our threshold here so that we're adding maybe a moderate amount of compression. And again, you're going to want to be listening with the rest of your kit. But another cool thing you could do is absolutely hammer this with compression. And if your compressor has a mix knob on it, you can mix in some of the uncompressed signal with this compressed signal, this overly compressed signal. Maybe 40 or 50%. Mess around with it, find what you like. Now, what if you want to add some more attack and punch and make your kick absolutely slam? You might say, Joel, well, didn't we already do that with compression? Well, yeah, we kind of exaggerated the punch and attack of the kick with a compressor, but that's more about evening out the dynamics of your kick drum. It's real important for our songs to have a consistent low end, and the compressor is going to help that. But to get even more attack, what you're going to want to use is a transient designer. So I use the SPL Transient Designer Plus. There's a ton of plugins like this out there, and they're very easy to use. So if we want this kick drum to slap even more, we can add some attack. We could take it away too. If you are looking to get more punch and tack and aggression out of your kick drum, something like this is the right tool. I urge you to not over compress your kick drum so that you bring up all the bleed or just make it sound unnatural by hammering it with compression. If you guys have any questions, please let me know, but remember to come back for the next video where we will be tackling snare drum. Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure and go grab a copy of my home studio mix guide with your go-to EQ and compression settings for all your tracks. And also go ahead and register for my online mix training that I hold a couple times a week so that you can learn how to turn your home recorded tracks into a professional product.